Hello, alright, I made a whole bunch of cocido. When I lived in Spain, different areas have different, like in the mediodía, the middle of the day, their big meal, they usually have soup. They call their soup not sopa, like other Spanish-speaking countries, but they call it not caldo, which means broth, but cocido, which means cooked. So this is, it's kind of like it's probably not, it's not very much like the Spanish cocido, but it's just, I've made it a lot, it's evolved to this. I had this in Spain. So, what you do is you start out with a mirepoix. For those of you that don't know, mirepoix is carrots, celery, and onions diced and then fried in the bottom of where you're going to make the soup in either butter or olive oil. I usually use olive oil, unless it's going to be the type of soup that has has a roux in it or butter. So then you fry up the mirepoix, which is again the carrots, onions, and celery, until they're just kind of, not very fried, but just they're cooked and they're starting to soften up and everything. And then that's how you start like almost every soup in the world. That's why we have mirepoix. But then on this one, throw in like 3 minced cloves of garlic, a couple potatoes peeled and cubed. And then I had some, I don't usually add meat, but I had some, the rest of that. If you saw my recipe for chaws, I only used half of the turkey kielbasa. So I put the rest of the kielbasa. In Spain, you would use some chorizo, like some chorizo. El Pozo brand, picante, was the kind I used to like to get. And you'd put the chorizo in there, but here I just used turkey kielbasa. And then you put a bag of lentils in there. Lentils aren't like other beans. You don't need to soak them overnight. You cook them for between 20 minutes to a half hour. And you have to keep checking it and add more water if it cooks the water out. And then right at the very end, I throw in just a little, to salt it, I put in a little bit of this brand and this kind of chicken bouillon. Add that. You might get the veggie kind, but I already have this for the chicken potato soup that I make all the time. So it's what kind I have. So this isn't even vegan or anything. It's got turkey kielbasa and it's got chicken broth. But you could make it with no sausage and with just buy the same brand. They make a veggie one, the same brand, and you could just use that, and then it could be vegan. In some areas of Spain, they use lentils instead. And when they have lentils, sometimes they put cauliflower in it, which is really good. But most places probably just use lentils. Those of you that remember, who was that football player? Herschel Walker? Herschel Walker was like a really famous NFL player, and he was for a little while was the fastest man on earth, had the world record. And then when he was in his 40s, he retired and fought for the MMA and all that. He's just kind of a freak of nature because he doesn't lift weights with the other football players. He just does push-ups in between commercials. He goes home and watches TV and does push-ups in between commercials and does like thousands of push-ups a day. And then he only eats once a day and eats lentils once a day. And he's like the experts say that's a freak of nature. They don't know how that's even possible, but every once in a while, he owns a chicken chain. Every once in a while, he eats some chicken from his restaurant he owns, but on a regular day, he just eats once a day, and it's this meal, but without the turkey sausage, just veggie lentils. In the Bible, it's a very famous meal. Throughout history in the Mediterranean, it's just a really famous meal. See how it's a little oily? And you can tell I learned how to do this in Spain. Make sure there's some olive oil floating on top so you can dip your pan in there. So I just made a lot. This is delicious, very good for you, and super cheap. If you know how to make this, you'll never starve. The turkey sausage makes it expensive, but it's a cheap, cheap meal.